Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Now I'm joined with Gary and Jan Crosby, who are other full-time RVers, and they were part of our crazy group that went up to Alaska this past summer. And we're going to talk to them about our adventures that we did up there in the last frontier of the United States. Which, after being there, I understand why it's called that for sure. So, guys, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome. Our pleasure.
Yes.
Looking forward to it. Before we get started, though, just introduce yourselves in your own words. Who are Gary and Jan today? And you guys can squabble over who wants to go first.
You go first.
Well, I'm Jan, and obviously this is Gary. As you mentioned, we are full-time RVers. Our base is in Maine, and 3 years ago we sold our house in Maine, and we got in our RV and wanted to just start traveling, and have been traveling the country doing volunteer work to kind of make our travels a little more purposeful. And we have a small cabin in Maine, which we are currently at for the holidays. And we come back usually just for summers, and then occasionally, for the holidays and whatever, we'll come back to Maine.
Yeah, so we come and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're both retired. I'm a retired X-ray technologist, and Gary's we're self-employed, but he's trying to fully retire. But
Yeah, hard to extricate myself sometimes, but basically, yeah, retired. Yeah, for all intents and purposes, retired. And I seem to do more now retired than I ever did when I worked. So
It's funny how that works sometimes.
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Well, we certainly don't have a boring retirement, so it's good. And so we travel most of the year.
Yeah,
and like Jen said, we have a place right here on a small lake in Maine, and so it gives us an opportunity to come back, see family, and then hit the road again. And so it's a good base station, and yeah, usually we spend the summer here, but like last year we were with you up in Alaska doing that trip, which was absolutely awesome.
An amazing journey.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was so eye-opening for me, traveling up through there, through Canada. I mean, it was really our first time spending any significant amount of time in Canada. I mean, the year before we'd gone to Niagara Falls. We were only there for, 4 or 5 days, not a ton of time, but, Niagara Falls area and Western Canada are two
Tiny
totally,
spot.
two totally different
Yes.
experiences. So,
Yes.
we first talked about this trip, when we were on a volunteer project in Wisconsin at Reggie, was when,
Yes.
kind of the group
That's right.
first formulated. I think you guys and Jennie and Eric were kind of the originators, really. And initially it looked like it was going to be like 12 or 13 rigs traveling till it,
Yeah.
till it actually happened. It was five of us, and then four of us after Stan and Naomi kind of tapped out to get back to pick grapes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
but what was it about the initial, concept that made you guys want to jump in and take 3 months and travel up there?
I think mostly because anytime somebody says you want to do something, I'm like, yeah, okay.
He's in. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter where they were going, Dan. He would have been in.
It doesn't even matter to me what it is. I am just one of those people. I'm like head first, right in. There's no backing out. So it's just my nature. It's been the story of my life, I guess.
You're the
And
the
for me,
ride or die guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or die in the process if necessary. But yeah,
We had never been either. I mean, we had never been to Alaska, had never been to that part of Canada, and
had talked about it.
had talked about it. It definitely was on the bucket list. So, but we were relatively newly retired at that time.
Yep.
And so, the bucket list was this long, and so we were like, well, why not? Why not start taking some of this stuff off? And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And I remember that first meeting, you said we had like 12 or 13 rigs. And I kept saying, Jen, boy, I hope people drop out because that's
Yeah.
too much.
How
I mean,
hard, how hard would that have been to try to stay together with 12 or 13
Yeah,
rigs.
and I just kept thinking as people were dropping out slowly, it was like, it got to a manageable size
Yeah,
as you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it worked out absolutely wonderful.
yeah,
The amount of them, the people that went, everything about it was just spectacular.
yeah.
Yeah.
We had such a great group, and I think it was a perfect size.
It really
And
was. And it was, I mean, there were three occasions that I can think of right off the top of my head that if we would have had a bigger group, there's no way we would have all been in the same spot. And that was at Peace River,
Right,
where we basically took up all of that free campground. There was one other person in there.
right,
And then that
right.
Woodpecker RV retreat in Talkeetna.
Yes,
And then,
yes.
yeah,
well,
That was
I guess our
wonderful.
our first stop in Alberta, if we had more rigs, we certainly could have fit them. But that was cool because again, it was just us, and those were always kind of my favorite stops. Is when it was just
yeah.
Yeah,
just us in
yeah.
there. Even
Our
like the
group.
visitor center that we'd stopped at. I forget what town it was. It was right after Peace River on the way up to the Northwest Territories. Um,
Yes,
Yes.
it was just
yes.
just us in the parking lot there hanging out, and
Yeah, yeah.
Gary and Alex were doing some project on his Jeep at that at that point. I remember that
Fixing the muffler.
specifically.
Yep.
You guys being under there, using
Yeah,
using
Yeah.
the blocks
yeah,
to get it up a little higher. But doing stuff like that
Yeah.
in the parking lot, you know,
yeah,
those are the type of memories that stick out most for me, more so than any of the tours or any of the stuff like that. It's just those kind of
yeah.
little moments that were
Yep,
unplanned that came together. And it was a great, absolutely great trip. And we had a great group, and there were times where we would split off. I mean, I initially thought we'd be traveling the way we left Great Falls the whole time, where we'd literally be in a caravan the entire time, and then it really
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of morphed quickly to, okay, here's our next destination. We're leaving at 8, we're leaving at 9, we're leaving whenever,
yeah,
we'll see you
yeah.
when we get there, which I think, hindsight being 2020, that did work out rather nicely,
Yeah.
and we would kind of
It
pass
Oh, yeah.
worked.
each other at times, see
Yes,
each other in
yes.
a
Yeah. Well,
rest
Jan and I would
area
always
eating
stop for
lunch.
breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think, Dan, what if I could ever suggest to anybody that does this as a group like we did, kind of I was going to say a misfit group coming together. It's not like the caravans that you pay to
To
join.
join, right.
right.
But when we sat there in Great Falls and said, let's all agree, we'll each stagger the way we need to stagger, and it's okay for somebody to say, I'm out of here for a day or two, or and not offend anybody. And I think that made the trip wonderful because everybody felt free to say, I'm gonna go do this tour. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Right.
And I think that really was a benefit for our group. And um, so if I can make a suggestion to anybody that ever plans this, is to make that ahead of time, so that everybody's not feeling like, oh, I really don't want to do that, but
Right.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah. Or I don't want to leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, but everyone's leaving at 8 o'clock in the morning. So
Right.
I was really glad that we, that kind of became part of our routine for all of us, that it was fine. If you want to get up early and leave, go ahead. We're going to sleep in a little bit, or like in Seward, we chose to stay an extra day. Everyone
Right.
took off and we chose to stay an extra day. We had
Yeah.
things we wanted to get done, and I absolutely loved it there. And so, I just loved the idea that we were flexible enough with each other to be able to kind of come and go, but then we'd always have a meetup place at some
Yeah.
point, whether it be that day or the next day
Yeah.
or whatever, we met up. So
Well, and we were very fortunate. I think the meshing of personalities was great.
yeah,
I really think everybody genuinely got along great
Yeah.
yeah,
and respected each other's uh time as
yeah,
well,
for
privacy
sure.
and time, which
Yeah,
Yeah.
was just,
yeah,
I don't know, I couldn't have asked for a better trip.
yeah, and
Yeah.
better people.
Yeah, and I think if we would have had a larger group, I mean, there would definitely be a tendency to not have everyone mesh. I mean, the bigger the group becomes, there's just
Right.
more personalities involved and everything like that.
Exactly.
So, when we first,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was kind of like you guys, where um, you know, not not right out of the gate was I thinking it would be great for the group to get smaller. Initially, I was like, oh, this would be really cool with this larger group. But as we kind of got closer, and then definitely once we started traveling, I'm like, man, I'm really glad that people dropped out because it would have been
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
tough to manage, a larger
Yeah.
group like that. So yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And to try to find, try to find reservations or try to find spots for all of us to stay. Like it worked out well the way it
Yeah,
was.
and it
Yeah.
wasn't because I mean I think everybody that was initially in the group were all great people. We worked with them up there at Reggie and everything. So it's not the people. I just think it's the sheer size and managing
Exactly.
Right.
the sheer
Exactly.
size of that group.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a job for somebody,
Right. Right.
and it's a good thing we had Jennie and Eric to do the planning. Our
Yes.
head planners.
Your head
No
planners,
doubt.
yes.
As much as they wanted to deny being the group leaders, they were the group
Yes,
leaders. I
Yeah,
reminded them of
they
that
wear
when
that.
I was on
Yeah,
the show with them too.
yeah,
yeah. That's their badge, like it or not.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
No
They
doubt.
earned that back.
Well, that was
uh,
the funny thing when, we would tell people leading up to that time at our different stops that we were headed, to Alaska for the summer, and they're like, "Oh, well, where are you, where are you headed? What's your route? Are you doing this?" I'm like, "I'd have to go back and look at the itinerary. I'm not really sure. I'm not planning it. I'm just getting emails and marking my calendar of
yeah, right.
spots when I got a call to make a reservation.
Right,
So
right.
that was kind of funny anytime someone would ask us about the trip prior to. But then as
Yeah,
we got started, then we all did have our input. There were times where, okay,
yeah.
Yeah,
hey,
Oh,
look, I
yeah.
found this spot to stay at. Oh, someone
Hmm.
else found this spot to stay at, and it's got an RV
Yes,
wash, and we just drove
yes.
300 miles of dirt road. That's a great spot. Let's all go and wash our rigs
Let's grab
and
it.
stay here for a
yeah,
couple times. So it really
yeah.
did work
Well,
out as kind of a team effort
Yeah,
as we were,
very much.
going
absolutely.
along. So,
Yeah, very much so.
Jen, you mentioned Seward as one of the spots you really loved, and I mean, I know
Yeah,
I couldn't certainly, you know, name a single spot, but I mean, Seward was great that we were right there on Resurrection Bay. I mean, the campground, I mean, it was boondocking, but
right there.
man, it was
Yeah,
about as good
yeah.
of a
You couldn't get,
campground as you could ever
yeah,
have.
you could
Um,
not get much closer to the water.
no,
Not without getting wet.
that's for sure.
It
That's
was
for
just
sure.
beautiful. Just
Um,
beautiful. Very walkable. You could walk downtown. You could
yes.
walk, to the other part of town. It was just, just had a nice vibe for me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. And like you said, all those things combined just made it that much better. Where again, you could walk down to the visitor
Yeah,
center, you could walk the other direction to all the little shops and see all the murals. It was super. But
right.
if you had to kind of
Yeah.
pick your, you know, I don't know, top three highlights of the trip or whatever, and again, it's always a moving target because I know it is for me. But like,
It is.
what would some of those be for for you guys?
Oh,
Yeah. Well,
such a hard question.
yeah. For me, it was without question the drive down into and the stays at the waterfront towns, Skagway, Seward, Homer,
Valdez.
Valdez, the just that drive down, going between the mountains, the waterfalls. So, all of those were, right up there on my list of just, and Jan, I kept saying, every time we go around the corner, can't get any more beautiful. You hit the next corner, you're like, wow,
It's more beautiful.
yeah, right. How does it do that? And I think just seeing kind of like the uh, rainforest look as you
Yeah.
got down as you drove down in was just really amazing for me. That was be
And
my
so unexpected for like when I think of Alaska, I don't think of it as being rainforest
Yeah.
like.
yeah
But going down into Valdez, I mean, you'd swear you were in a rainforest
Yeah.
with the greenery and the green mountains and the waterfalls. I mean, I kept saying to Gary, the mountains are just weeping. The water was just weeping off the mountains everywhere you went, and you as you're driving down in, and it was just, I don't know, very unexpected for me.
yeah
Yeah.
and it would take us forever to drive down in there because I think we were almost always last getting in because I'd stop at all the waterfalls and just stand there and look at it like wow. you know
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah
And, I don't know. I'm not sure if your question was specifically top three places, because certainly, like, I mean, to combine places and experiences and everything, I'm not sure I could, like, it just is all rolled into one ball for
Yeah.
me. But in terms of places, like Seward was definitely high on my list. And I actually loved Yellowknife, for
Yeah.
totally different reasons. Yellowknife to me was just um, a it wasn't a big city. It wasn't the quaint little waterfront village. It wasn't a, you know, smaller, typical Alaskan village. To me, it was just a kind of the working man's town. It was just the average guy's town. And to know that that was a capital of the Northwest Territories, and I feel like I learned so much in Yellowknife about the people and their traditions and their ways,
Their
especially
political makeup.
their political makeup. You know, I mean, touring this legislative assembly in Yellowknife was, I'm not even a political person. You ask Gary, I run from political conversation.
Yeah, every time I
I,
open my mouth, she moves away.
I hate that. Um, but I was fascinated by the legislative assembly and the tour that we
Yeah.
got to take. And it was just so informative about how their people live and the challenges that they face, because there are so many remote villages and territories that make up that area, as you know, of Canada. I mean, it's huge. And I don't know, I just loved Yellowknife. It was just,
It was a neat place.
it was a
Yeah.
neat place for me. I loved, swimming in the Great Slave Lake at midnight, jumping in the lake, and just, I don't know, it was just a great place for me. So that's high on my list.
Yeah, the Yellowknife was very, very cool. And to understand, again, for people that are listening, just look at a map and look at the size of the Northwest Territories, and then break it down to
Right,
the fact that basically half of the population of the Northwest Territories is in Yellowknife, which is 20,000 people.
right,
So there's only another
Right.
right.
20,000 people scattered throughout that vast amount of land.
Area.
It just
Yeah.
really
Right.
And
kind of
that's
puts it into perspective.
Yes.
yeah, and
Yes.
and you see that driving up there. I mean, we drove for hours, and I don't know, did we actually go through any? We went through one tiny little suburb of Yellowknife when you get close, but other than that, I don't really think
No,
there
it
was
was a
anything, was
vast
there?
nothingness.
Yeah, I mean,
And that was the other thing. There was lots and lots of wildfire damage driving up to Yellowknife. And so that was, to me, just very difficult to see, because I don't think I had ever seen that much
yeah,
wildfire damage. And just to see the extent of the trees that were burnt out, the homes that were burnt out, and just, that was a lot for me to take in. And it was miles and miles and miles and
Yeah,
miles of wildfire damage in that area, which had been very recent.
right.
Because yeah, so
Yeah, well, even when we
yeah. It's
first
just
got to the 60th parallel visitor center, and driving up into that area, um, like there were spots where you could still smell the smoke, like it was just that
yeah,
oh,
recent
definitely.
that we had,
yes,
that fire had gone
yes,
through. I mean, if I remember correctly, I mean, I think they'd only reopened that visitor center within a week of when we arrived, if I
yeah,
remember correctly from talking to the
yes,
lady
you're
that was
Yes,
right.
there.
it was.
Yeah,
Um,
you're
Yeah, it
right.
was freshly reopened. Yeah,
Reopened, yeah.
yeah, so again, to
Yeah,
see that devastation was, you know,
yeah, yeah,
again, it hits you in a different way for sure, and then to
yeah,
yeah,
to see that and then to hear the resilience of the people,
right,
like the lady at the
right.
visitor center said, we left to go get groceries and didn't come back for 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever it
Right,
was,
couldn't come back.
because,
Yeah,
once we left, they were like, nope, everybody else is evacuating. We can't come. And then come back and everything's
yeah,
leveled, but yet there they are. They're back at
mm,
work. And it's like, so we
yeah,
rebuild, we'll end up rebuilding.
yeah,
That's the way it
yeah,
happens.
and yeah, and it's normal after we left where we camped by the airport, and the next night I forget, it was just a small
Yeah. Fort
provincial
Liard,
park.
Fort
I was
Liard.
Yes,
yes,
yeah.
yes,
And I was talking to the ranger, the guy with the ponytail, and he's like, "Yeah, that happens all the time." He says, "That's normal, it burns."
yeah,
He says, "No big deal."
Right.
So like you said, it's just a way of life for them.
yeah,
That happens, and every 10 or 15 years, it burns off, and
Yep.
everything grows back again. And he said,
yeah,
unless it's getting close to population, they just let it go.
Yeah.
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 Well, what else can you do, really? I mean, you
Yeah,
can't, but yeah, that was a lot to see going up there. And then, like I say, the actual town of Yellowknife, like, it wasn't beautiful
it's a city.
little places that we saw, but it was just it just resonated with me. Yeah, I mean, areas around the town were very beautiful. We went on that Cameron Falls
Cameron Falls.
hike.
Yeah.
And that was just phenomenal, spectacular, and the ride out there was beautiful. So the area surrounding Yellowknife is just gorgeous for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Coming in there was pretty cool for sure.
Yeah.
And then just to understand like this time of year, how it transforms, where,
Oh yeah.
we saw
I can't
we were
imagine.
there not far from where you guys did your Great Slave Lake plunge, where the one, ice road, goes in for the winter. And
Yeah,
like just the concept of ice roads is
I know.
Yeah. No,
wild to
thank you.
me, like,
Yeah,
okay, we're going
yeah,
to drive right
yeah,
across the Great Slave Lake because it's
yeah.
frozen and it's,
Frozen.
that
Yeah.
that concept just I can't even fathom it, like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
we're driving over a lake and it's frozen, but beneath us is, 60, 80, 100 feet of water.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it doesn't float, I'm not driving across it. It's not happening. So,
Yeah, give
Yeah.
me the duck boat if I'm doing that for sure.
yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. So,
Exactly.
yeah, no, no.
Yeah.
What were some of your biggest surprises of the trip? Some, stuff that you didn't really expect to encounter, whether a place or the people or an experience.
Hmm. That's a tough one. I really think for me it circles back to the rainforest look. Never expected that up
Yeah,
there at all in any way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
Um, Other than that, I think I pretty much expected everything. Didn't know how grand it would be, like the amount of waterfalls, and
right.
but that we one of the hikes we did. I mean, I have a picture, I think, of Jenny's hands on one of the leaves, and the leaf is like this, or just everything was just grown so big, and I think that was my biggest, let's say, unexpected.
Well, that was certainly one of the things for me too. But I'd say for me, one of the other things was just learning that um, they still practice like sustenance living and, fishing for their food and, just understanding that whole salmon run and how important it is to the Alaskan people and the people in the North in general in Northern Canada. That was unexpected to me. I'm not
Yeah,
sure what I expected. I know I wasn't going to see lots of big cities and, Costco's in Alaska, but I didn't expect that people were going to, you
Yeah,
know,
fishing for buckets of salmon.
right. And
So,
that they still dry it and dry it up for the winter. And that's their food for the winter. And, like understanding their lifestyle brought a lot of unexpected knowledge to
yeah,
me. So, yeah.
yeah, and that's such a great point because I know when we'd gotten sick and were basically a day behind the group and then got the flat tire and had to, find this guy in the
Yeah.
middle of the wilderness and he was talking to me and talking about his wood burning stove and then just seeing the shed of wood that he had and talking to him and he was like, yeah, I'll have to, that'll be twice as full as it is now as we get closer to,
Yeah.
to winter and just again understanding
Hmm.
that. I mean, it's not something, it's something that we take for granted down here in the lower 48. We're not
yeah.
Right.
having
Right.
to gather wood all summer long to make sure we have enough to heat our house and our wood stove, throughout the
Exactly.
winter when it gets
Exactly.
40 below.
Yeah.
Totally
Exactly. And
wild.
fish during the salmon run and, get your quota and understanding that, they have different quotas and the head of household gets a certain quota and then you get so much more allowance, depending on how many dependents you have in your household. And, like they have, rules around their fishing because they have to
They
live
live off
off of
of
it,
it. Yeah.
and then the hunting and they have to hunt for their food and, and,
And
um,
some places they can hunt year round for their food, which
yeah.
in the lower 48, you don't see that.
Right.
You have
There's
a hunting
hunting
season.
season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So,
so that was very unexpected for me to learn that. And it's neat. It's cool.
Yeah. I know during one of our last kind of group dinners that we had with each other before we split off to head back to the lower 48, we talked a little bit about um, just the nature of the Alaskan people and how different they were and how welcoming they were. I mean, just you guys can give me your take on what that experience was, you know, like for you guys, just interacting with, both the Alaskan people who were there their entire lives and the transplants who, showed up there
Mm,
10 years ago, 5 years ago, and never left.
mm,
I mean, I had good interactions with everybody.
me
I,
too.
I never ran across somebody that I walked away thinking, wow, they need to get a grip. Yeah, I think it's, you go there because you want that way of life. I mean, I'm sure like in Anchorage, you probably run into, people are in cities that are cranky, but I think outside the cities, I mean, everybody was welcoming and warm and
Yes, and friendly
yeah,
and
and
informative. And I found that they wanted to share their way of life and their
yeah,
stories, which, I love that. And I found that fascinating. So yeah, I found the people very warm, very welcoming, and, very interested in sharing their lives and their stories and their histories, with strangers.
Yeah. Yeah. They
yeah. I
were.
think
I
that's why
mean,
they're there.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, they were happy to, I'll go back to the guy that fixed our flat tire for us. I mean, he was telling me about his kids and, about his time as
Yeah,
an ice road trucker and, all that sort of stuff that he was just, very forthcoming and sharing as though we had known each other our whole lives. I
yeah,
mean,
Yeah.
till it was,
yeah,
till
yeah.
we were done and he got our tire back on the rig. I mean, I was in his house looking at his wood stove because he wanted to show me how big this this wood stove was, and it
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
It was fascinating.
yeah.
And then, understanding the size of the logs that he would put in there, and he's like, yeah, those things I throw them in there and they just burn like paper mache. He's like, I don't have time to be splitting wood, I'm
Yeah.
I'm throwing, and he
Never
was,
get it all done.
yeah, it was a big 8, 10, 12 inch log that he's that he's throwing in those things.
Yeah,
And it was just such a
Yeah.
cool interaction. Something I'll never
yeah,
forget my entire life, just how friendly he was. And
yeah,
again, he was just
yeah.
one specimen of all the people that we interacted with along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that was kind of like the guy that owned the Alaskan Stove Company campground where we stayed. I called the number. I think he was over in Wasilla or something. And he's like, I'll just, pick a spot and put the money in. He says, I'll catch up eventually if I get back there. And, not worried about it. And then he did get back there when we were there a second time. And they're having, uh, actually, maybe it was the first time, 4th of July. They're having a party anyway. He's like, all of his friends were over. He says, yeah, come on over. He said, come visit. I never did, but
Yeah.
still, it was just that nice, just easygoing. You know,
Very friendly.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
which is my mode.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I like
And
that.
that campground that we stayed at, where the ranger, well, I don't even know if she was a ranger, but she was the one that was in charge of the campground. And she brought us did she make bannock for
Nothing.
us?
The mix they make of the fat,
The
uh,
fat with the,
Yeah.
fruit and
yes, yeah,
Yeah. I
the,
fish.
forget what it's called.
right,
Yeah. That was
yeah.
our first stop in the
Um,
Northwest Territories at Twin Falls
Yeah,
Provincial
yes,
Park, I
yes.
think. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, yes, I think that's it. And the spruce needle tips and showing us,
Eat them.
how, I mean, she had talked to John and Karen quite a bit about that, but to make that and bring it to, just people who are camping there, it's
Right.
just so wonderful. It was very friendly and just sharing of the knowledge. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was an incredible experience, without a doubt. And you know, the people of Western Canada and the people of Alaska, I thought were very similar. In just again that
Yes,
welcoming
yes,
attitude. I mean,
yeah,
even when
yeah,
we had split off from the group there between Whitehorse and Beaver Creek, and spent Canada Day in Haines Junction, and they had a big complimentary hamburgers and hot dogs there at the community center, and
right.
we went in there, and again, people were just welcoming. And then I mean, they were fascinated to hear our story as much as we were
Yeah,
to hear
yeah,
their story as well. So that was always cool to just have that exchange with people and understand, and kind of
sure.
you know restores your faith in humanity at times, because
A
sometimes
little
Yeah,
bit, yeah, for
sometimes down
sure.
here in the lower 48 we miss uh
Hmm.
that connection
Hmm.
at times because we're so caught up in everything else that's going on.
too much population. I mean, it was like when we were at that Triple G campground there, like where you went to that took out the we went over to the flea market and I got the guy's life story. I was buying some sausage from him and some burger and his whole farm, the kids and everything. And yeah, it's just
It's really cool.
yeah,
It was really neat.
small town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter where you are, the small towns people are just
Yeah.
easier to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that was one of my, I don't know if surprises or something I didn't expect, where it was like every one of those small towns that we hit, they all had their own farmers market. Um, and it was
Yes.
different than what we would consider a farmers market down here, because it wasn't always just
Right.
produce. It was, crafts and arts and all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
But it just
Yeah.
seemed like a way where they all stayed connected in the community, is that one day a week during the summer
Yes.
is we're gonna gather, and
Yeah.
we're gonna
Yeah.
get
Yes.
together and we're
Yeah.
gonna
You're right.
sell our stuff, and for us to be a part of it. I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many of them we went to, but that was always, whenever we'd get to
Yeah.
a campground, would be like, oh, hey, farmers market on Thursday,
Right.
farmers market on Tuesday,
Right.
whatever it was, and we'd
Right.
all
Yeah.
gather
Yeah.
up and go down there, and it was always such a cool
Yeah.
experience. Again, just not just partaking of what they were selling, because, all of us being full timers, we weren't buying a whole lot of stuff outside of food. We're
Right.
not buying
Right.
the
Yeah.
souvenir to
Right.
hang on the wall,
No.
but just the
No.
interaction with the vendors. And again, hearing those stories
Yeah.
was so, so cool. And I really looked forward to
Yeah.
any time where, and
Yeah.
like there were times where, we'd get to a spot and I was like, oh, we just missed the farmer's market. And all
Yeah.
of us were kind
Yeah.
of
That
like,
was a
oh,
bummer.
bummer, So
I
Yeah.
it was
know.
it
I
was
know.
neat the
But
way
then
that.
there were other times. But then there were other times when we got there and it was so unexpected, like Diamond Valley. We get there and there's this whole
Yeah,
festival going on in Diamond Valley. And, that was really, really cool.
The parade, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
fun.
yeah. That was cool. As a matter of fact, we're just about to finish our one bottle of barbecue sauce that we bought up there at Diamond
Oh,
Valley. And I was saying to Sandy, I was like, man, we should have bought two of these. And she's like, we did. I'm like, oh, good. So at least there's one more after we finish this one. So, um, but yeah, that was so
yeah.
cool. Those little experiences like that, um,
Yeah.
again, that were completely unexpected, and just,
Yeah.
made the trip that much more,
Yeah.
worthwhile. And even that, I mean, our campground was literally right next to where the festival was going on,
Right. That
so it
made
was
made
so
it so
cool.
much better. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I think you had said something that just triggered my thought. I think one of the things that I didn't expect as well was, or well, what I expected was it to be a trip of a lifetime, like a one and done. And after, I don't think so. I think now that we'll probably go back there at least one more time, maybe more. And the amount of people that I talked to that they were there multiple times. I talked to one guy from Germany. It was his seventh trip there to Alaska and Canada, and he, and I see why now. At first, I was thinking, it's a one and done, like I said, but I don't think so. I'm definitely
Yeah.
thinking there's got to be at least one more trip up there, if not more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Would
and I think that was the surprise for me was
Mm.
would that one more trip include a trip up the Dempster Highway?
Absolutely.
probably, yeah, more than likely, but
We get that. We'll have to get that one in.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I really want to get back into the coastal area again up there, and then yeah, probably make it up to Dempster and
Yeah.
uh,
Because we didn't get to do, you guys got to go to Haines and, all along that coastal area there. And, we didn't get to do that. And there's so much we didn't get to do. I feel like we did so much, but there was so much that we
Right.
didn't get to do. So yeah, we definitely feel like it's still on our bucket list to go back.
yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah,
and Haynes and Skagway were they were a throw-in for us
Yeah.
at the end, after we
Yes.
left Tok,
Yeah.
and it was like, you know what,
Yeah.
we're going by, like
Yeah.
yeah,
why
Yeah.
would we not swing down there, and then to
Yes.
get
Yeah.
the rig on the ferry and take the ferry from Haynes to Skagway. That was
Yeah.
just a super cool experience as well. I mean, we've had the rig on ferries before, down in
Yeah.
Texas going across from Galveston to Bolivar, but that
Oh
that was
yeah.
yeah,
just a
yeah. We've done
totally
that. Yeah,
different experience than
Yeah.
that
Oh,
ferry
for
by
sure.
far.
Yeah.
And just again, those little towns, Skagway, were basically the entire, you know,
Yeah.
economy and survival of the town, depends on the cruise industry, and
Yeah, the
Oh
cruise
yeah.
ships. Yeah. Yeah.
we met a woman there that was running the fudge shop in Skagway who was actually from Mississippi, and
Oh,
she
really?
leased that storefront, and they would drive up at the beginning of the season from Mississippi and stay there all season long and then
Huh.
drive
Wow.
back, and just again another
Yeah.
Yeah.
fascinating story
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
hearing
And that's
that.
similar to Yeah, that's similar to we when we went down there, we spent the night there. We stayed in that White House Inn,
Right.
and the couple that owned it, her and her husband, stayed at that White House Inn. It was years ago. They said like 10 or 15 years ago, number of times over the years, and ended up buying it. And now
And
they stay
moving
there
there.
and
Yeah.
moving there.
Yeah.
So, and they were from somewhere down south. I don't remember
They were.
exactly where.
Yeah, I don't remember the state they were from either, but they had vacationed there and gone and stayed at that inn several years in a row and just loved it and loved Skagway. And then the inn came up for sale and
Yeah.
they bought it.
Yeah, yeah. And again, when you talk about just the drives in general, um, you can't even begin to list the best drives, but like
Yeah.
that one, because you guys did Skagway kind of on the,
Yes.
called the first third of the trip, when you went down to
Right.
do
Yeah.
Earlier.
the train when we were in
Yeah.
Whitehorse. We didn't get there till the end, then went up and checked out the Carcross Desert and that sort of stuff, and the Yukon
Yes.
Suspension
Yeah.
Bridge. Did you guys do the Yukon Suspension Bridge when you went down for the train, or did you just?
Is that um is that the bridge that was in Carcross?
No, it was before Carcross. It was basically right after you crossed from Alaska back into the Yukon. Um, I mean, probably less than 10, 15 miles.
Oh
And it was just an
no,
attraction.
we pulled in there. Yeah, I was gonna say we pulled in there and it was like $15 or something to go walk across the bridge. I'm like, man, nah, I don't care that
And it
much.
was packed.
It was full.
That's right. It was
Yeah,
full. It was packed. We were
yes,
like, I don't think so. So we kept going. But
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. When we did
And
it,
this one here,
Yeah. And I'm not good with heights. So I was like, let's just keep going.
yes.
yeah, when we stopped, we didn't know anything about it, and we actually went past it and turned around because we're like, hey, that looks like something we want to check out, and went
Yeah.
back in, and it was empty for us. So we were
Oh,
like,
really?
oh, $15 Canadian, that's not bad. And now if it would have
Yeah,
been
that's not
crowded,
bad.
we
Yeah.
might have had a different take,
Yeah.
but it was literally like
Yeah.
the two of us and less than a half dozen other people. So we're like, yeah, let's do this.
Oh,
So we can
Okay.
kind
wow.
of
Oh,
take our
Wow.
time
Yeah.
and enjoy it. But it was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
That,
But again, totally unexpected. It wasn't something we were
right.
planning on doing. We
Yeah.
just saw it and, and
Yeah.
did it. And I think there were a lot of different, places like that. And the other thing I thought was cool with our group when we were on you know, our our travel to our destination, like we were always, when we had service, would always be communicating back and forth as to, hey, here's a spot, whether it was cinnamon buns, or I remember the little restaurant that we stopped at after we left Denali. And then, you
Yes.
guys were
yeah.
pulling in
Rubies.
as we
Rubies.
were leaving.
Yes.
Yep.
So we were
Yeah.
always kind of letting
That was a
each
lot of
other
fun.
know, like, hey, if you haven't gotten to this spot yet,
Yeah.
it's worth the time to pull in
Right.
there. And I thought that was kind of cool with
Yeah.
our group to be able to do
Yeah.
that. And it's still happening today with our group. Yeah, I mean, Gary, you just sent the
Yeah.
picture of a
I,
cinnamon bun yesterday.
Yeah. It was pretty good. So,
I know.
It
And
seemed
I
like
wasn't with him yesterday. I was at my sister's and I saw that WhatsApp come through and I'm like, where is he with that cinnamon
and it seemed like the trip
bun?
revolved a lot around ice cream and cinnamon buns for sure.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
nothing wrong with that.
Not at
So,
That's
all.
a great trip. That's a sign of a great trip.
yeah. Yeah. And yeah, the travel days were neat. It was really nice having both Alex and John and Karen with the smaller vehicle, which was, I think, often was very handy having them being able to, like the night we stayed at the airport. I mean, somebody had to run around that town and look for a place,
Yep.
and having John's smaller rig. So that was handy having. I
Yeah,
think it
they
was
could
good.
scout ahead.
Yeah, and they were good. John and Karen were both great about that, and willing to go do that, which was very helpful.
Yes, very
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. Even
Yeah.
in Peace
Uh,
River, when they found that little county park that we were in or whatever it was, they were the
Right.
scouting. We all stuck around there
yeah.
by the Wendy's. Or was it a Wendy's?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or KFC? I don't know what.
Uh,
There's something. We
yeah,
all kind of
something,
stuck
yeah, the
around to
KFC, I
wait
think it was, yeah.
for them to say, okay, yeah, there's because again there were only what 6 spots in that campground, and
Right,
they got there
right.
and
Yeah.
there were 5 left,
Yeah.
just enough
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
We could make it with
Yeah.
4 if
But
Alex would double up with us, but 5 was ideal because then it made him feel like
Right.
he was his own man for that night,
Yeah.
having his own spot.
Yeah.
and it was great having him along.
Yeah.
And as Jennie and Eric had said, I think they were wondering how everything would go with an 18-year-old with a bunch of old people, but he was awesome.
He was so great.
A true pleasure to have along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an
So
experience that I think will last my lifetime for sure. Having him along on that trip
Yeah.
was so
yeah.
Yeah.
fun to
For
be
all
able
of us.
to
Yeah.
experience that with him, and just see how
Yeah.
he changed and grew throughout the trip,
Yeah,
with those
for sure.
experiences and stuff. It was really
I'll yeah.
neat.
I'll tell you, I laugh so hard sometimes. So I'd look at that Jeep and listen to it run and rattle and knock, and only an 18-year-old would get in that. It's like, okay, well, let's drive to Alaska in this thing. I was like, man,
Yeah, I told him many
Wow.
times he's got a lot more of my mother's genes in him than I do in me, because that was her '67 Plymouth Valiant in a nutshell.
Ah,
yeah,
I mean, I remember when
yeah,
she passed away, reading through her journals and stuff, and she would have a note, that she stopped in Wichita and spent $14 on gas, and Polly took a quart of oil, and or
yeah,
some other spot, and Polly took a quart and a half of oil. So she was like in a
yeah.
constant oil change mode on that.
Yeah,
right, yeah,
There
right,
was never
right.
old oil in that car for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, to see what he was traveling in, I told him many times, I'm like, he never met my mom. She had passed before he was around, but he definitely got some of her spirit in her for
Yeah.
sure, to take
yeah,
That's
that thing,
awesome.
to
Yeah.
think the miles he put
Yeah.
on that on that Jeep
Yeah.
is
Well,
like
and it did well for him. I
it
mean,
did.
yeah.
aside from a few minor little things, I mean, that car served him well.
Yeah, yeah, but I just was always laughing. I was thinking, back when I was 18, I'd do it,
Yeah.
no problem. Wouldn't think, but now I'm like, yeah, do all the pre-maintenance, do everything. And like, I really don't want to be on the side road working on this. But when you're 18, you don't care.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
like whatever.
Well, like when he blew that radiator hose, but had
That was
had
funny.
had the spare right there because he
Yeah,
knew it
right
was going
there.
to
Yeah.
happen,
Yeah.
and we were all like,
Yeah,
man, what great timing though, because
yeah,
Yeah, for
that
sure.
could have happened anywhere along the side of the road, and he would have still
Right.
yeah,
changed it
Yeah.
regardless of where it was, but for it to happen
Yeah.
when it happened and how it happened, you
Yeah.
know was
Yeah.
definitely
Just as
as
we
good
pulled
as
in
it
there.
could
Yeah.
get.
yeah,
That's neat.
So
yeah. So it was funny. But it was just fun to watch.
Yeah.
yeah. So Jan, you said that you kept a journal um throughout the
Yeah.
trip. What, have you gone back and reflected through that journal since we've been done, or is it still
Just
kind of
this
set to the
morning.
side? Okay.
Yeah, literally just this morning. I finished it, the last day we were traveling and set it aside. And then this morning I was like, we're going to be talking with Dan. I just want like to have fresh everything in my mind. So I reread the journal this morning and it was really fun and just to relive all of the
Yeah,
adventures that we had and the excursions that we did and the places that we visited and the people that we met. It was just really fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad I did. I'm so glad I did because we did so much. And, you
hard to
know,
remember.
and that was the problem towards the end, we were scheduled to go up the Dempster. We wanted to go up the Dempster and had been looking forward to going up the Dempster, but we were at that point, we were like, oh, we've done so much already. And, we also wanted to get back to Colorado.
We had things we got to take care of.
Yeah, we had a
Yeah,
new granddaughter that had been born and we wanted to meet her. And So, but we had done so much. So I'm really glad that I had kept a journal, because to try to like remember all the little nuances and all the little things, I if I didn't write them down, they'd be lost.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
toward the end we were definitely all getting a little bit homesick, I mean it
Yes.
was that I mean
Yeah.
for
We were done.
us that was definitely, you know, the longest time that we were away. I mean we left
Yeah.
Pennsylvania in December of 2023. Um, and then we got here, you know, into Florida and spent most all of December here in Florida, but we left Florida on January 2nd of 2024, and then started our
Oh
way,
wow.
over,
Wow. Yeah.
ended up at that project in California, and then went up the coast, and then
Hmm.
eventually Great Falls. So, for us, it was definitely the longest time that we had gone, without
Yeah.
seeing our, immediate family. So
Family. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was nice to get back to
Yeah. That's a long
Pennsylvania
time.
when we did in September for sure. And we
Yeah.
were, there was a lot of anticipation as we were coming across the U.S. to get back home. And again, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, home is wherever we are, but home is still,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania and Florida for
Yeah.
Where the
us, where we
family
have the
is.
family. Yep, no doubt
Yeah.
about
Yes,
it. And I know
exactly.
even
Yeah.
even with Alex, I mean, when we split off after Mount Rainier, and he got back to Pennsylvania, I think within a week, if I remember correctly. Um, so he was definitely a little homesick as well,
Yeah.
at
I
the
can
end.
understand that.
Yeah.
I was. I mean,
Yeah. We both were.
we have kids up here in Maine and grandkids, and daughter and grandkids in Colorado, and we were like, okay, this is a long time. And you know, we have some other friends. Well, George and Louise. I don't know if you know them.
Hmm.
Um,
Levasseurs.
with the Levasseurs,
Yep.
and they were doing a similar. They were out 5 months or something,
6 months. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
6 months, and it was all in the lower 48. But she was saying, I want to go back home. She said, I can only absorb so much at one. I need to go back and reset, and then start again.
Yeah.
And we felt the same way. It was like, okay,
Yeah.
3 or 4 months of just constant input, and new stuff. And you get to that point where you're like, okay, well, I just
Yeah.
need to take a bit of a break and
Yeah.
then go back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And we were kind of the same way. Once we were done, we were done. And like, it's just, okay, book it home then,
yeah.
just let's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even when we got into Pennsylvania, it was it was a lot of being on the move as well, because we have one daughter that lives about an hour and 15 minutes from the rest of our kids. So we got there first because they're just outside of Harrisburg, and we were with them for about a week, a little over a week. But then once we made our way back to Reading, we were still heading out to Harrisburg every couple days because our one granddaughter's field hockey team made a run into the state playoffs. So, and then our
Mhm. Yeah.
our other granddaughter happened to be in the district cross country meet, and we were able to, they happened to be both in the same area one day where we were able to hit a field hockey game in the morning and then literally like jump in the RV and head to, another half hour away to another high school to catch the cross country
Yeah.
meet. So until we got down here
Yeah.
to Florida, we were still on the go, quite a
Yeah.
bit. So, to be where we're at now and know that we'll be here for, essentially 2 months before we hit the road again is,
Yeah.
a welcome change. And
Nice.
it's really odd because
Yeah.
we are on the go a lot since we've been doing this full time. And we generally aren't at places a whole lot longer than, 2 weeks for the most part. But
Yeah. That's
Same as
good.
after
Yeah.
same
Same
that,
as
with
us.
us. Yeah.
yeah, after that trek and just the miles we put on and, the constant on the move, like it was nice to kind of get here and get set up and know that
Yes.
I'm not going to have to put these jacks up or the slides in for, quite some time at
Right.
this point.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
Settle in.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And we feel exactly the same way. I mean, we love it here at the cabin, but it is nonstop. We have six grandchildren here and, two daughters and their husbands and their families. And, they're always, mom, dad, let's do this. Mom, Grammy, Grampy, let's do this. Where there's cross country meets, there's volleyball
Yeah.
matches, there's, track is starting soon. And, like it just, it's one thing after another. And we love it. It is our
It's our home base.
It's our home base. And even though we're on the go, it's still sort of a mental reset for us, because we're with family and, we're back home. So, and like you say, even though home is wherever you are, for us who live in an RV, this is the home base, and it just creates a reset. So
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
way.
So before
And
we
it
wrap
was a
things,
lot of miles.
oh yeah, it was. Before we wrap things up, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and just talk about full-time RV travel in general. Like what was it that inspired you guys to, you know, I know you're in a cabin now, but to sell your main house,
Mm.
and kind of embark on, you know, jumping in a home on wheels.
Hmm. Something different to do. It was a good time in life to do it. We didn't, I had gotten business to the point where, I don't have to be here all the time. And we had been traveling quite a bit, 3 or 4 months a year anyway,
Mm.
previous, even before we sold the house, we were traveling a lot. And then Jan was ready to go. I wasn't quite at that point yet with work. I just had to get things organized to where I could go. And then one day I finally said, okay, I'm ready. Let's just do it. And and again, it's one of those things you jump in and just say, okay, so
Yeah.
we just built actually the house that we sold. We had built 8 years previously as our quote forever
Forever house.
house,
Yeah.
had 3 foot wide doors, 4 foot wide hallways. You could get a wheelchair down there if you
Right.
needed to. And
We
that,
were like, we're gonna die in this house.
right.
And
And
nope.
no, 8 years later, we sold it and bought we had changed our V's. We had a 33-foot Class A and we moved up to a 36 or so. Uh, but yeah, no, we just were like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Do it well. And I think one of the things that drove us to do it was to do it while we could.
Yeah.
If one of us becomes incapacitated or hard to walk or whatever, do that when you're 75 or whatever, and be back home and stay here and be permanent. But we were both healthy and able
Yeah.
to do this, and then we met you through Y2V. Jan, as we talk about travel, Jan wanted to have some purpose to our travels,
Yeah.
which I agreed with, and so she found Y2V, and which turned out to be just a wonderful connection. Both feeling good about the work we were doing and all the people. I mean, we just have not run into anybody that has not been a good person, because we're all there for the same reason.
All the people we've
Yeah.
met made
Yeah.
some wonderful, wonderful friends. Yeah.
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 This Alaska trip probably never would have come around had it not been
Right.
for Y2V, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No doubt
Yeah.
about that.
So
No doubt about
Yeah.
that.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
that was actually
so
my
it's all
next question is like what, when you say add purpose to your travels, I mean, what was it kind of specifically that, I mean, because those projects, I mean, granted, we may only work 6 or 7 hours a day, but like we're doing hard work on those projects. I mean, the
Yes.
project we met you
Yes.
guys at in Lake Charles, we
Yeah.
were doing some hard, manual
Yes.
labor
yes,
on that
Labor.
project. And
Yes.
when
yeah,
there was no trouble falling asleep at night because, your
At
body
night.
needed
no,
to sleep. So, what was it that really made you guys want to, do that and give back? It's one thing to give back to community you live in, because we
Right.
always volunteered throughout our lives back, in Pennsylvania. Um,
Right.
but what's the feeling of going into a community that you're going to do work in and you may not ever go back and, you know, be able to take advantage of the work that you did there? I mean, what inspired you guys to want to do that?
Well, I know for me, even though I might not ever be back to that community, I'm going to that community and I'm going to explore that community and I'm going to live in that community for 2 weeks or however long I'm going to be there. And I want to understand that community. And then, you know, it just feels good to give back. So even though it's not my home community or whatever, it is my home community while I'm there. And, I don't just go there and do the work on the volunteer projects. We go there, we explore the area, after work on that weekend in between the 2 weeks, we're out exploring wherever we are. And that's one of the things that we've always said that we absolutely love about Y2V is the added benefit of it has taken us to places that we probably would never have gone to.
Yeah,
I mean,
Defiance, Ohio,
right. Or
Antigo,
Antigo,
And
Wisconsin. Who would ever, like, it's not on the way to anywhere, I mean, if you go to Wisconsin, you're going to go to the Dells or you're going to go, whatever. But who would ever go to Antigo? And yet it's the cutest one, most wonderful little town we've
yeah.
explored, and in the area in general was great. We did a lot of fun things there. So, giving back to that community is just like a no-brainer.
Yeah, and for me, doing stuff for people is more rewarding than getting stuff done for me.
yeah,
I mean, I guess I don't really call it giving back personally. I just, giving
yeah,
is just more rewarding.
yeah,
So, and we've been very fortunate in our lives, so it's nice to be able to kind of help other people out. You know, we've lived a fortunate life and worked hard for it, but it feels good to be able to go out and do stuff for people that need it. And for me, I love the nonprofit volunteer projects.
yeah.
The state parks are good, but the nonprofits are really where my heart's at. Uh,
I agree.
it goes directly to what they need. So,
Yeah,
and I think it was also, I don't think I expected in the beginning, but I think it's the extended, I don't know if you call it family or friendships or whatever, but
Mm.
the Y2V, I would say, as a whole is a big family.
Community, yeah.
Yeah, community. Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. So
yeah,
I think that's what's driven us to continue because, I mean, you could just drive around and do nothing. I mean, but that, quite frankly, gets boring after a while. I mean, how
yeah,
long can you say, "Oh, that's pretty, that's pretty"?
Right.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that really drives us more. Like, we've got a few other volunteer things we're going to do, and way on the way down to Florida. Yeah, it's just it's enjoyable for us.
Yeah.
yeah,
And neither of us mind the work.
Mm.
yeah. You must be reading my mind, Gary, because that was going to be my next question again was, did you ever anticipate the connection you'd have with people when you're volunteering? And again, it has built, so this Alaska trip doesn't
Mm.
happen if it's not for Y2V and all of us meeting on, on different
Right.
projects,
Right.
and that's the
Right.
thing that
Right.
I love about it. And I think, Phil and Shar really go out of their way to try to get people to connect, where they don't
Yes.
want
Yeah.
this little group of 5 or 6 people to be doing their thing and this group of 5 or 6 people to
Right.
do their thing. Like they want to have those, campfire evenings and, the potluck in between, you know,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
weeks and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. So I really do, I think that connection, you got to definitely tip your cap to those two because they absolutely go out of their way
Yeah.
to make sure that
Yeah.
everybody there feels like they're part of the project and that,
In- right.
they're
Well,
Included.
connected
Yeah.
with other
yeah,
Yeah.
people.
and not only have they gone out of their way, but they've been successful at it.
Yeah. Very successful
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, it makes a difference, and I think it makes a difference in the energy that people will put into a project by having those connections. I mean, you start to get along with people, and you're like, okay, let's go, let's go, let's go, and so yeah, I think
Yeah.
they've been very, very successful at it.
Yeah.
So on many levels.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's why like anytime we connect with other volunteers, first thing we do is send them a text of a picture. Like when we saw Vince and Amy in Banff and Shannon and Judy, and
Yeah.
yeah,
then
yeah,
when we were in
Yes.
Skagway, we
Yes.
actually saw. I don't think you guys know Craig and Lynn Springer because I think they only did the first Reggie project, but they happened to be on a cruise that happened to be in port the day, so
Oh
I
no. Oh,
I
that's
took a
funny.
picture and sent it to Phil and Shar, and first thing Phil was like, "Why haven't they been on any more projects?"
right.
Of course.
I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
"Ah, they had to get some dental work done.
Always
They had some other
recruiting.
stuff going on, But
Yeah, right.
I
Yeah.
always make it a point anytime we reconnect with
Yes.
with other Y2V volunteers to to
Yes.
send
Yeah.
them
We
because I
do
think that
too.
feeds their soul as well, knowing that
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
again
absolutely.
it's about the work, but man, they really thrive on the community that they've built for sure.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a huge community now.
Yeah.
it really
I
is.
mean, there's a
Yeah. For
lot of
sure.
people, and yeah, and it's just overall, it's just really neat, and it is rewarding to be able to do that volunteer work, and And I have to say, if we weren't doing that, I'm not sure we'd still be full time at it. I think we'd get like, okay, well, this is all right. Probably have another house, just do trips, but not, really go out and explore for
Yeah.
longer periods of time and then do trips in between. So, um, yeah, so I've for us, it's been great.
Awesome.
So I don't know if that answers the question about what put us into full time, but
Oh yeah, definitely, without a
yeah.
doubt. So, and we've
Yeah.
talked about a lot of different stuff. Is there anything that you guys think we missed that you'd like to chat about before we wrap things up, or did I know we didn't cover it all, but
No,
No,
there's so much. We didn't even touch the excursions, and there were so many, some really big ones, some really small ones, but they're just, I would just say to anybody who is listening, who might be thinking about an Alaska trip, um, I was really a little bit anxious about trying to do it all and trying to get all the excursions in. But then you see the price tag of all of the excursions
yeah,
and you say, okay, I can't do it all. So no matter what excursions are done, they stick with you and they will stick with you for a lifetime. We didn't get to do it all. We were very disappointed.
didn't do the bear
We
thing.
didn't do the bear thing. We had originally not planned to do it because of the cost. And then John and Karen did it and had such fabulous pictures and stories to tell. And we were like, oh, we need to do that. So we put our heads together and we said, okay, we're going to do it. And we went and we were fortunate enough to get a last minute reservation. And
Fod did.
and then the day we went and it was fogged in and it had to be canceled. And we were very disappointed in that. But that didn't, for me, it didn't take away from the overall trip. I mean,
right.
I got to do dog sledding. I got to do yoga with the reindeer. We got to do whale watching. We got to do several boat ride excursions. We got to kayak among icebergs. There was so much that we did get to do. So you can't think about all the things that maybe you can't do because of cost or time or circumstances. And so it's a fabulous trip no matter what you get to do.
Yeah.
So
And I would say for people that are thinking about it, that are nervous about it, just go do it, take your time,
yeah,
and not, 'cause it's so interesting. People make a big deal about like border crossings. They're nothing. You just don't bring stuff you're not supposed to bring, and
Right.
and you'll be
and
fine.
you're fine.
Yeah,
People say the roads are so bad. You know, do an appropriate speed. And the roads are fine.
That's right.
It's one of the reasons we didn't bring our Class A up there was I kept hearing horror stories. And I'm like, next time we're taking our Class A because they weren't that. I mean, yeah, there's potholes, there's frosties, but don't do 55 where you should be doing 30.
yeah, just
Exactly.
go slow
And just so that's my suggestion. People is just go
yeah,
do it, enjoy it, slow down,
yeah,
and like Jan said, do the excursions you can or the hikes and have a good time.
yeah,
I none of it, I don't know, didn't stress me out because I just was like, yeah, we, the border crossings, we weren't carrying anything illegal, so what? What are they gonna do? Take your eggs or your chicken? But that's
Right.
fine, whatever. Um, and I just that's my
yeah,
suggestion is just go enjoy, take your time, and not worry about it.
Yeah.
And I did find that we had we very rarely made reservations far in advance, and
No.
we didn't have a problem.
yeah,
No, we
It
really
was,
we really
it was
didn't. I
great.
mean,
yeah,
Homer,
Yeah,
we had reservations in advance, and then obviously Denali and Banff and Jasper, I think were really our only
right.
major advance
Yeah,
reservations. Other than
right.
that, it
yeah,
was 1 or 2 days out
yeah,
Yeah,
where, we were making
right.
reservations. And
Yeah,
that's one
yeah,
thing
yeah,
I've heard from a lot of other people that have done that trip is that they really don't, again, other than Denali, they're really not making a
yeah,
whole lot of advance reservations.
yeah.
yeah,
And I think I'd add one other thing to it, Dan, which is if you can do it with a small group, I think that added to our enjoyment.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
It did for
uh,
me.
yeah, by ourselves would have been okay, but to do it with a group of 4 or 5 couples, I think even 3 4 5 couple I
Yeah,
think makes it a perfect size to
yeah,
add variety to the trip. uh bounce things off. I mean, you came up with places that we hadn't found. We came to places that other good people hadn't found. John and Karen, everybody found stuff. And so I think it made for I think a small group was really ideal. I
Yeah.
mean, truly ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Absolutely.
yeah.
It was cool. And
Yeah.
the other thing, back to the roads, 'cause that was one of the things we heard a lot about as well. And, granted, we all got, a chip in the windshield. You guys got a little bit bigger than a chip in the windshield, but that happened before you even got into Canada. That happened outside of Great
Right.
Falls, the main one.
Montana.
As I say,
But
windshield, what windshields?
but yeah, it's like this isn't a trip that you should be in a hurry on. This isn't a trip that you should be worrying about making
No.
good time, so and
Yeah.
with all the frost heaves and gravel pits and stuff, I mean, you have plenty of notice to,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they're coming. So,
They're coming.
slow
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
down and just take it
Yeah.
easy. I mean, the only thing you have no control over in the gravel pits is if there's a semi coming the opposite direction, because they're not
Right.
slowing
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
They're maintaining
No.
speed, and they don't care
Yeah.
what's flying up behind them. And again, it is what it is. If you see one, if you see one coming, just try to stay out of the gravel
Yeah.
pit until they're through it. If you have
Right.
that
Yeah.
Right.
opportunity.
Exactly.
And bottom line is just the windshield. It's replaceable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No doubt
Yeah,
about
for
that.
sure.
So
I did wait till we are back to Colorado to replace it.
yeah, you don't want to replace it while you're up there, and then you get another chip,
No.
down the road.
No.
And I mean, you
Yeah.
know where our chip was. I mean, we haven't replaced it, and we're at this
Yeah.
point we're just
Yeah.
kind of it's on the passenger side, even outside of where Sandy's main line of vision is. So we don't really
Yeah.
have any intentions in the near future to worry about.
No.
Mine looked like this. So
Yeah, yeah. You
it was
you had no
bad.
choice. You had no choice. That was
Yeah.
getting replaced one way or the other. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Well, guys, that
But
that brings
yeah.
us to our final question. This is a great conversation. We could go on and on, but
Yeah.
we do have to wrap things up at some point here. So, as you know, the subtitle of the podcast is "Many Little People in Many Little Places," and that comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, "Gloria," which go, "When many little people in many little places do many little things, and the whole world changes." So, my final question to all of my guests is always, what's one of the little things that you guys do on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
And personally, I approach everybody with a positive and welcoming attitude. It makes such a difference. And I'm going to choose one very specific thing. I think it was an Amazon order I had. I think it was an Amazon order, but something got really screwed up on it, and it was a minor little thing. And, it was nothing, but I ended up getting through customer service, and I told her what happened, and I said, if there's something you can do about it, great. If not, it's not the end of the world. It's just a part, and just the treatment of her at the end. We had to write a couple of letters back and forth, a couple of notes, and she said, "Thank you so much for being kind."
Uh,
You know, which it's easy to do.
Makes a difference.
But it just treating people well.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's about respect. And it always, my whole entire life, it's been about respect. I try to respect others and their points of view and what they're saying. And I expect the same in return. So
Yeah.
I think if we can spread kindness and
Yeah.
respect, it would make the world a little better place.
Absolutely. I agree completely. I love that. So, guys, I really appreciate this. It's a great conversation to kind of get back and reminisce about that.
I know,
journey
so
we took.
fun.
Yeah.
So
Again,
fun.
even if we do get back up there again, which I hope to, that first trip will definitely be the trip of a lifetime for us, for sure. Again, just
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
not just the experience of it, but who we experienced it with, for sure. So it was great to have you guys on and reminisce about that incredible trip that we took. Because it'll definitely be something that sticks with me for the rest of my life, for sure. So for everybody out there
Same
listening,
here.
be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com. While you're there, check out my Pay It Forward program, where you can pick up a copy of one of my books, and Sandy and I will donate it to a little library or somebody along our travels, and it's just a great way to pay it forward. So, Gary, Jan, again, I appreciate this. It was a great conversation, and we will definitely see you guys down the road.
Thanks,
Pleasure.
Dan.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
Yes.